You might find the Blackwood Hotel tucked away on a forgotten block. Local legends are rarely this specific. They say anyone who sleeps in room 914 disappears before the sun comes up. Detectives have searched the premises for decades, yet they never find a physical body. No signs of a struggle, no traces of blood, and even their luggage evaporates. The only thing left behind is a single photograph, and every time a new person disappears, that photograph changes, showing the latest victim standing right beside everyone who vanished before them. Daniel Carter spent his career chasing stories exactly like this. As an investigative journalist, he built a reputation by walking into supposedly haunted places and finding the very human, very logical explanations behind them. When he heard the rumors about the Blackwood, he booked a flight to Chicago. He intended to set up his cameras, spend the night, and document the specific hoax used to stage these disappearances. Daniel operated on a strict set of rules. To him, a creaking floorboard was just settling wood, and a sudden draft was a poorly sealed window. He believed a hardened skeptic could not be tricked by atmospheric ghost stories. But the Blackwood operates on a different set of rules. We are going to look at what happens when an immovable, highly rational mind runs headfirst into a system designed to overwrite reality. The process begins the moment Daniel steps into the lobby. He asks the elderly receptionist for room 612, the room he actually booked. She checks her screen, stops, and quietly ignores his request. The building itself reacts. The lobby lights flicker, and the power cuts out for a second. When it returns, the receptionist hands him a hand-heat-mile key with 914 carved into the brass. From here, the hotel physically herds him. Daniel steps into the elevator, but before he can press a button, the car climbs on its own. It bypasses the lower levels, opening directly onto the silent, peeling wallpaper of the 9th floor. The hotel is actively selecting its guests and forcing the environment to comply, overriding Daniel's choices before he even touches the handle. Once Daniel turns the lock and steps inside, the environment instantly isolates him. A freezing wind hits his face, and the heavy sound of the Chicago rain outside cuts to total, unnatural silence. He starts his routine, unpacking his cameras and searching the furniture. Inside the bedside drawer, he finds a faded black and white photograph of 5 people smiling in front of the hotel. But looking closely at the weathered image shatters every rule of logic Daniel relies on. Staring back at him, alongside those strangers, is his own face. He is in the decades-old picture, wearing the exact same jacket. He turns the picture over. Written on the back, "Welcome to room 914. This photograph isn't a warning. It's evidence that the room functions as a closed circle. The timeline fractures here, pulling the present back into the past before the physical body has even vanished. This temporal overlap leads directly to the final trigger. Daniel glances at the bedside clock. It reads exactly 2:13 a.m. 3 slow, heavy knocks echo from the door. It is a deliberate auditory cue, engineered solely to capture his focus. A terrified person might hide, but a skeptic demands to know the cause. Daniel pulls the door open to confront whoever is outside. He finds an empty, silent hallway. By drawing him toward the hall, the room ensures he isn't looking at what's behind him. He investigates a physical cause, while the real threat is already inside the room. Looking down at the floor, he finds a Polaroid photograph. The chemical paper is still wet, the shapes actively developing right in front of him. As the image clears, it reveals Daniel standing in the middle of room 914, and he has a wide, happy smile on his face. Daniel is currently standing at the door, completely paralyzed with fear. He never struck that pose, and nobody ever snapped that camera. The smile in the photo represents an integration. His body is shaking at the door, yet the room has captured his likeness at peace. The room doesn't just take the person, it absorbs the mind, archiving it into the hotel's collective history. Daniel built a successful career by conquering the unknown with reason and evidence, but all his deductive skills and recording equipment are completely useless here. The people who check into this hotel are never truly missing. They are perfectly preserved, archived as timeless, smiling fixtures within the walls themselves. Daniel's investigation failed because he brought facts to a place that treats facts as optional. If you ever visit the Blackwood Hotel, some mysteries must remain unsolved to survive. When the police entered room 914, they found the inventory of a life interrupted. A backpack on the bed, a phone on the nightstand, a digital camera on the carpet. There were no signs of a struggle, no DNA on the sheets, and no body. The only item that didn't belong was a single, freshly developed photograph. It showed Daniel Carter standing in that very room, smiling alongside a group of people in Victorian suits and 1940s dresses. Looking at the history of the Blackwood Hotel, this isn't an isolated incident. The disappearances here follow a specific sequence, occurring with a regularity that suggests the hotel isn't just haunted, it's operating on a schedule. To understand why Daniel Carter disappeared, we have to look at the specific steps the room takes to isolate, track, and eventually claim its guests. These vanishings aren't random acts of violence. They are the result of a process with distinct rules. Rules that Daniel Carter unknowingly followed until it was too late to turn back. The sequence begins with the photograph. In Daniel's case, he found a picture of himself that he never took. This impossible piece of evidence is designed to trigger a specific reaction: immediate, localized panic. That panic drives the guest out of the room and toward the only other source of information in the building, the lobby. But there is no staff on duty, only an old guest register sitting open under a dim lamp. The ledger reveals the hotel's timeline. Disappearances in 1928, 1936, 1949, 1968, and 1985 show a clear, repeating cycle. On the last page, Daniel found his own name. His room number was correct, and his status was marked pending. The guest book isn't a history of who stayed at the Blackwood. It is a log of who the building has already decided to keep. At midnight, the situation changes. A voice in the hallway warns the guest they should have left earlier, but by this point, the physical exits are no longer a viable option. The environment itself begins to react. The lights flicker into permanent dimness, and the hallway temperature drops so fast the air becomes visible. In this dark, Daniel's camera became his only way to see. While the hallway looked empty to the naked eye, the digital screen revealed a tall figure in a black hotel uniform standing directly behind him. The figure didn't speak or use force. It simply raised a single finger and pointed toward the stairs. Despite his fear, Daniel followed, drawn back toward room 914 by a sense of inevitability. The process relies on the guests' own curiosity and their trust in their equipment. By the time Daniel returned to his room, he was no longer a guest. He was a participant in the room's final requirement. Inside the room, the mirrors change. They no longer show the bedroom or the person standing in front of them. Instead, they act as windows into another version of the room, crowded with the silent guests from the ledger. As the victims in the mirrors smile, the bedroom door slams and locks. Frost creeps over the brass handle, sealing the exit so completely it effectively becomes part of the wall. Every photograph in the room then lifts into the air. These hundreds of faces represent every missing person from the guest book, swirling together in the center of the room. A single person-sized gap opens in the center of this floating collective. It is the final physical space the room needs to fill. When the police arrived, they found the camera on the floor, but the man who owned it was gone. Daniel Carter had been reduced to a two-dimensional image, filed away in the room's permanent collection. Daniel's belongings remained in the room, but every biological trace of him was gone. No fingerprints, no hair, no footprints. He had been completely removed from the physical world. This lack of evidence led to the Blackwood's closure. Today, the building is chained shut, an abandoned shell in the middle of the city. But locking the front doors doesn't stop the process inside. The physical structure of the hotel is secondary to the system that governs room 914. Local residents still report seeing the lights on the 9th floor flicker on during rainy nights. If you look closely, you might see a figure waving, one of the guests who never checked out. The Blackwood Hotel doesn't need staff or an open lobby to function. It simply waits for the next cycle to begin. If you enjoyed this look into the architecture of the supernatural, Subscribe to Horror Story Vault and turn on the bell icon. Some rooms are always waiting for their next guest.